Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to my shop. This is the monthly Q&A, so if you have any questions, throw those in the chat. If you're watching this recorded, then you can go down in the description down below and you'll see a whole bunch of all the questions listed out, everyone with a timestamp beside it, so you can jump right to where they are in the video. Here's the word. So that way, if you're watching it recorded, you can read through those rather than having to watch the whole thing. If you are watching this live, then go ahead and throw your comments in the chat and we will try and get to as many questions as we can tonight. And we're going to have a good time. We do a live like this once a month, and then the rest of them fill in with all sorts of other things. We do a live video, excuse me, we do a Q&A every month. We do a live video every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central Time. So, yeah. Announcements. Not this weekend, but next weekend is the Best in the West. It is the largest tools show sale on the West Coast, and it is in it's in Portland, Oregon. Portland? Yeah, Portland. I'm flying out there somewhere. So it only happens once every 2 years. So if you are in anywhere in the Northwest, it's well worth the drive. There are people literally flying in from all over the world. So it is an amazing tool sale. It's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And some of the best deals you're going to find out there in a long time. Yeah, so if you want to see more information about that, there's a link to that in the description down below, and you can sign up and look forward to meeting you there. Other than that, we have the National MWTCA coming up in Michigan City, Indiana. That is the last week in September. There are a couple MWTCA meets in Indiana in Illinois that I'm planning on in the next couple weeks. Or no, I think it's like September. That's right, September 11th. What?
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, just before we go out to Washington. So yeah, lots of things coming up, and we might not be doing the live next week. Our family's gonna be coming over, and we might be doing something with them instead. So stay tuned to what we have to do with that. So yeah, we'll jump into questions. If you have any questions, throw those in the chat, and Sarah will collate them. What's the first one we got?
Madison Leeds asked, which would be a better buy, a vintage Stanley No. 7 router plane or a new Veritas router plane, both about the same price?
If you're buying it for usability, the Veritas is better. I almost hands down say go get the Veritas. It's a modern make. It's a slightly better design. It feels good. It's made of a ductile steel. It's just all around a better plane. And so generally I'm going to say that, especially now with the price of these just going through the roof. When I bought this one, it was actually I bought this from a friend. Actually no, he gave it to me because at the time I didn't have the money. And so I told him I'll pay you in the future. And he said, oh, don't worry, no, it's a gift. And I'm like, what? But yeah, he paid, I think he said $120 for this in the box with all the parts for 120 bucks, which was even a good deal back then. But nowadays, that's like a $500 deal. So yeah, go get the new one. You'll be much, much happier with that. You can still pick up antiques with one cutter for 80 to 100 bucks. And you may or may not even get a cutter with it for that price, in which case it'd be a little bit cheaper, but the Veritas is the better way to go. So for user, yeah, go that way. What's next?
Sorry, I thought I was going to sneeze. Oh, nope, there's no sunlight. Let's see, Warren Munn. I'm currently working on a small 3x1x1 project. What's the smallest thing you've made, and any tips on tiny things?
Well, I've made a lot of little things. I've done several small carvings. I made a tiny little heart for Sarah once that was like inch by inch. I've done, I made a coin once. I made a small little thumb block plane. I'm actually going to be making a plane tomorrow that will end up being about an inch long. Yeah, anytime you get with small parts, it just becomes tedious. Oh, there was a fun one. I actually made a Rubio style frame saw for Barbie. So the whole thing was only like 4 inches long. Which if you haven't seen it, if you go to Instagram, Barbie's Workshop, it's an Instagram channel with Barbie doing all sorts of things. She has an entire shop of tools, including the, the bench and all of the planes, and actually makes things with the little tools. It's kind of fun. So yeah, that would be it's a fun channel. Yeah, lots of little things. The biggest thing is just how do you hold it? And when you start getting into small things, usually the best way to do it is get a hand clamp. And you get a hand clamp and you put that in your vise. Number one, that raises it up a little bit, and so you're actually working with things a little bit closer to you. And sometimes I've even put a small hand clamp inside of a hand clamp on the vise, and it gets it up a little bit higher, and I can do far more maneuvering, because it's a lot easier to hold little things in a little vise than it is to hold little things in a regular bench size vise. So these are phenomenal. The other thing is you'll find that you do a lot more with files, because you're taking off more minute increments. So files and rasps end up doing quite a bit of work, at least for me. So. Yeah, be interesting to see what you make. Put up pictures when you got it. What's next?
I thought for sure you were going to say something about you're so used to being with me that you're expert at working at doing things.
Smallest thing I ever made was a child.
Yeah. Anyways.
Surprisingly, all three of them were smaller than Sarah at one point.
Well, I'd hope so. Considering. Let's see. R said, can you demo widening a rabbet with a side rabbet plane?
Actually, yes, because I have a project here I'm just going to be using. I don't use them very often, and now I got to actually find where I put it. I think I put it down here. Yep, there it is. I moved it a couple times because it's normal housing place. So a side rabbet plane is a very interesting little tool. It is completely out of focus and hard to see. There we go. So a side rabbet plane has these on the side. Mine actually has the fence, which most of them that disappears on it. So I'm actually going to loosen that up because I need to move it back a little farther. And what this will allow you to do is actually widen out a rabbet or a groove, making it harder to get in there. So this one, I need to loosen this up. I'm just going to move this fence out of the way. I'm not even going to use it this time. And I could just take it off all the way, but I don't need to. Now the next question is it set up? And that one's actually really dull. And that one might actually work. So I'm going to use this one to demonstrate. So what I've got is, I've got these sticks here, and I need to make this wall go farther in that way. Now I could bring the rabbet down and actually do it in that way. But if it was in a groove, like if it were in a groove like this, how do you actually widen out that wall inside? So what you can actually do is get this and come along with this, start it all the way back here. Yeah, that one's dull. Am I going the right direction then? There we go. This will take that shaving off all the way along. So usually I'm going to be doing it in a stick on the whole bench top and mounting it down in there. And so the trick to this is, number one, you need to keep it square. It needs to be perfectly up to it. There's a tendency to tip it one way or the other. And then number two, you have to have the force pushing into the sidewall, which is hard to do if it's down in a groove because you're pushing up here. So you actually have to kind of twist the plane and keep the whole thing up against the sidewall. And I have to remember which one I just did, so I don't redo that one, because I just have to take like one shaving off of each of these. This one. And so usually what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to mount them down on the bench and hold them between dogs. And so let me actually do this one. So I imagine it being a lot longer than this. Move the camera over. There we go. And then with it pinched between dogs, then I'd come through and I set just the nose on there. And I want the nose to be flat against it so the iron's not engaging yet. And then I let the iron engage, and I'm going the wrong direction. So this one's got to go this way. So one of these is sharp and the other one is not. And this isn't actually going to clamp. I need to tighten it a little harder. And I'm going to be putting all the pressure against that sidewall. That's all it needs. I just need to take one shaving off of these. So yeah, side rabbet plane. I actually have a whole video. Was I in the wrong camera there? No. Okay, good. No, I have an entire video showing how to use these. If you look up, I think I have it listed as the Stanley 79, which is this one. They also come with the Stanley 99 and 98, which is a matched pair. And rather than having two different irons, the nice thing about this one is two irons, so you can go with the grain no matter which direction you're going. Whereas if you have a 98 and 99, you have one that goes one way and the other one goes the other way.
Apparently you were wrong camera. You were the right camera when I last looked up.
Well,
and then
I'll do it again,
looked up again.
Since I've got this one. Here. Switch back over to this one. There we go. So I can set this in here. And I'm going to start with the nose of the plane. Here, let me actually get this a little closer. And there we go. Now you can actually see what's going on. So I'm going to start with this, with the nose of the plane on there, and the blade backed up, except for I need to go this way, because that's the one I want to use. So the nose is on there. I'm putting pressure onto the sidewall. Tighten that down a little bit more so it doesn't rotate on me. And I want to keep it tight up against the side. See there, I'm not letting it go. It's hard to do with this one because it's actually wanting to rotate away from me. Tighten it down a little more. I want to keep it flat against the side and go all the way along. And so I've made that groove one shaving wider. And so if you have a housing groove that it fits down into, it makes it really nice so you can really sneak up on the side. And these are very, very low angles, so you can actually do them on end grain. So if you're doing like the grooves on the sides of a shelf that the shelves then fit into, those would be a cross grain cut. And so this will actually still do that. But if you look up a video, I think I have it listed as Stanley 79 side rabbet plane. I think is what I called it. Because there are a few different names for it. Side rabbet's probably the most common, but there is, what do they call it? A groove widening plane, which is kind of a mouthful. I've heard a couple other names through, but yeah. So what's next?
Let's see. T.A. Nunes said, "What do you think of the Stanley 78 rabbet plane?"
78. We'll go down a number. I don't actually have a Stanley 78. I have the Miller's Falls knockoff, which is their 85. My wife just exploded. What number do they give it? They give it the 85, yeah. And I don't use it that much. It's basically a metal moving philister plane. And it works very well. And if I need to make rabbets, about 50% of my time I will grab it. The other 50% of the time I'm actually going to grab my Stanley 45. I do a lot of rabbet work with that, just because I like setting that up a little bit easier than setting this up. But this one does work really well. I just found it to be a hair finicky. I know, I like setting up the 45, and a lot of people don't. I've never used the bullnose on it. I've never used the bullnose on it. I've never done anything that I need to actually do a stopped rabbet with one of these. But yeah, it's a good one, especially the new ones. You can get the Stanley's making a remake of them now, and they're relatively good. I mean, there's not much to them, so they're not that hard to mess up. There aren't a lot of finicky, fascinating things on it. You're not going to get a really high-end plane, but you don't really need a really high-end plane for a rabbet plane. So yeah, the new ones are actually pretty decent. What's next?
DrKahnihoochima asked, can a finish like Rubio be made at home? Maybe not as good, but cheaper.
I have seen a few people try. I've never seen anyone succeed. It's one of those things that there's proprietary processes involved that, yeah, I don't know. I've never seen. I've seen a few people attempt it, but never anything that comes close enough that would warrant settling for a cheaper product. So yeah, and the thing is, they call it hard wax because in the end it is a hard wax that's left over, except for it's like a really hard, durable wax. It's not like a Brazilian wax.
You're way too obsessed with that.
I get comments on that one all the time. I get people, why don't you like Brazilian wax? I can't believe you didn't like Brazilian wax. I'm like,
there's your April Fool's video for next year. Sorry, we digress.
But yeah, it's basically suspended in something, which don't know what that is, that doesn't exactly evaporate like a thinner. So it's not a VOC that populates into the air. It's something that then hardens with the hardener, but would naturally harden with oxygen by itself. So yeah, I don't know. It'd be one of those fun things, but I haven't seen anyone actually successfully make one cheaper.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, baby.
You got another question?
I will in just a second, but you know.
Oh yes, we have a son who wants
Priorities.
more time, budging in here where he's not supposed to,
Go.
asking for free time.
I usually give it
Our
to them.
kids have limited phone time, but whenever we do the live, they get the extra time that they want for supposedly staying out of here. But this one, yeah,
Okay.
it would be very interesting to see if anyone has come up with one. If anyone has any recipe like that, send it to me. I'd be glad to take a look at it, but I have not found one yet.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
Let's see. Ken Carlile. I have a low angle jack plane that I use for things like I would use a normal jack. Blah. Should I consider getting a number 5 as well? And what would be the advantage of a 5 over a low angle jack?
You know, honestly, a 5 and a low angle jack, the only things that this struggles with is doing really good finish on hard and difficult grain. Yes, you can put a high angle blade into this and close the mouth, and you can start to get rid of it, but without the chip breaker, it's just never going to quite get to the same point. So it doesn't do very well with difficult grain. It can get better, but it generally doesn't. The big benefit to a low angle is that, number one, it's very easy to set up. Number two, that lower angle means that it is easier to push. It takes less force to go through the wood. And if you put the higher angle on it, you're getting rid of that easier push, and it's just kind of at that point, why do it? And if you're going to be smoothing, and you really want to do that with the high-end plane, you're generally not going to use a number 5 for it. You're generally going to go down to a 4, maybe a 4.5, maybe a 3, and those are ones you really want to be able to set up within an inch of their life. And so if you have one of those, I don't think you really need a number 5. It would be nice if there's a few little benefits here and there, but this can do everything that can do pretty well. Unless you are one of those people who do like to smooth with the number 5, which there are people who like to smooth with the number 5. And in that case, then yeah, get a number 5. But generally, no. What was the other half of the question?
What would be the advantage of a 5 over a low angle jack?
Yeah, the big benefit of having a bevel down plane is the chip breaker and the natural higher angle of it. They just function so much better on difficult grain than a low angle with a high angle blade. This is the go-to plane. Once you get it set up really well, you can do almost any grain butter smooth with one of these. It just takes a lot to actually set it up like a smoothing plane. You just can't do that with a low angle plane. But that's the only thing that's really one or the other. And really, you're only doing that a small percentage of the time, so it's not a huge necessity. And that's not a task you're generally going to want to do with a 5, and so in that case, do you need a 5 if you already have a low angle? No. I have several 5s and a low angle because eventually one of them's dull, and rather than sharpening it, I'm just going to grab one of the other ones. What's next?
I'm trying to figure out why you have a battery attached to a Q-tip.
Oh, that's Thursday's video.
Oh.
Etching saw plates.
I saw a picture on Instagram. Okay. Anyways, I digress. Woodworking with Logan. Are 4-fold rulers any good?
Folding rules. Where are they? Where is mine? Yep, there it is. A folding rule are a lot of fun. And yeah, I got like this one that comes out. And I mean, they're perfectly fine. They measure things very, very well. I mean, they're quick and easy. And if you're only measuring things up to 24 inches, this is actually relatively good. But they don't have a hook on the end, so sometimes it's a little bit harder to measure things. Usually, if I need to pull a measurement, the thing I'm going to be grabbing is a tape measure. It works really, really well. This is phenomenal for it, and it's so much easier. And these are cool. And if you like the historical methodologies of measuring things, then this is the way you're going to want to go. And there are some really nice ones out there with lots of extra things and slides on them and just really, really beautiful. But generally, if I'm measuring, I'm going to be grabbing a tape measure because I'm often measuring things that are longer than 24 inches. And if I'm measuring something smaller, that still works really well. And this has much, much finer accuracy to it. Whereas this, the smallest marking on it is an 1/8. I can't actually, see this side I do have the 16ths, but because they're up the thickness of the wood, it's sometimes hard to get an accurate mark, whereas this is just a little bit more accurate. In the end, it's just a preference thing. A lot of people like using a compound square, sliding square. What's the word I'm looking for? And I don't like those as much. In the end, it's just personal preference. Do you need one? No. Are they fun to play with? Yes. And I used to use it a lot because I found it very fun. And then the fun kind of waned, and I found myself using a tape measure more because it's more practical. But that's just my personal thought on it. So, no dead set answer one way or the other. What's next?
Let's see. Peter DeWitt. I just finished watching the whole back catalog of Wood by Wright. Many
wow.
clips.
That's over 2,000 videos.
Many clips show you tensioning the blade on the frame saw. Do you always detension the blade for storage?
Yes, yes. If as long as I remember to. Yeah, the thing is, if you keep the tension on the blade, you're keeping the frame in compression or tension, depending upon which piece it is, and that can slowly wear it down. Also, what it will do is the frame at the top and bottom will slowly bend over time, and as they bend in, you can be eating up your tightening distance. And so if they bend in too far, eventually you can't tighten it enough. So yes, you do need to loosen it every time to relax the wood and not bend it. It's just, yeah, it will last longer. Yeah. What's next?
Let's see. H Mostafa asked, have you sharpened your black TayTool auger bits yet? And if yes, how?
Yes. I've been thinking about doing a video on that. We just haven't yet. The difference with them is, well, here, let me grab a regular auger and show the actual difference. I can give you a quick rundown. And then I'm going to need, where'd my auger file go? My auger file is missing. Okay, I'll look for it a little later. So, there we go. With a regular auger, you always sharpen underneath the blade. You don't sharpen on top of the blade. And then for the spur, you always sharpen the inside of the spur. You never sharpen the outside. If you sharpen the outside, then you're actually going to change the diameter of the cutter. So you always sharpen the inside here and underside there. With these, however, you can't sharpen the underside. It's this rounded cutting surface. So with these, you have to sharpen the top side here. But you have to be very, very careful because you still have to sharpen the inside of the spur. So if you sharpen the inside of the spur and this, you'll find that you'll wear away that corner in there. So I found coming at it with a slight angle across this way allows you to get that top surface. And then I can come in with the spur and do that. And I will do each one with a safe side so that I'm only doing one at a time and not both of them. Is this one I've sharpened? No. I've actually got one down in there I've sharpened a couple times. But yes, you'll sharpen the top side face here. You just have to be very, very careful of that spur connection. And you need that top side face to be perfectly flat across there. But other than that, it's sharpened the same way with the file. But yeah, that one's been on my list. I want to show that here sometime. Because yes, you can sharpen them, and I have needed to.
Oh.
What's next?
Hang on, I forgot to timestamp that one. Let's see. Jack Gallagher. Going to be building a leg vise. I think there's 2 A's in there. Going to be building a leg vise and looking to challenge myself by making the screw myself out of wood. Would you recommend hand filing it like your vid from a year ago or making a thread box and tap? I imagine it'd have to be 2 to 3 inch in diameter, so the thread box would be a lot bigger than any I've seen.
Yeah, that's actually a video I really want to do is making the thread box to the nut. Because if you're going to make your own thread box already and you don't have a bolt to make the thread box, then you have to make the bolt first to make the nut, to make the thread box, to make your final bolt. And so it's kind of like a weird chicken and egg thing. Because you need the bolt to make the proper threads for the nut. You really can't make one without the other. You can't make the nut without the bolt. There are ways of doing it, but it is much harder to do. Also, when you start getting to the larger ones, you're probably going to want to have 2 cutters. And they have to be big, big cutters. And so then you might actually want to have 2 stage double cutters. That means 4 cutters. One that cuts halfway in, and then on the next turnaround, the next one engages and cuts out the other half. And that is a lot of really hard fine-tuning, incredibly difficult to set up. And it's a video I've been wanting to make for a while, but I've been having a hard time finding a source for the cutters. All of the cutters are for smaller ones that you would get away with like an inch, maybe an inch and a half. But I haven't found a source for a large cutter. You can make your own. Most people will take an old triangular file. You can anneal it, and then you can file it to the right shape and then harden it back into the cutter. But then you have to make 2 or 4 cutters that are all identical, that shape well together. And that's really tricky. really, really tricky. It can be done, but it's a lot of work. And it's one of those things where you're going to fail 5, 6, 7 times before you finally get one that actually works. So yeah, it's not an easy process. It's very doable, but it's not easy. Most people, when they're making it, they'll actually make a jig that has a router on a sled, and the router has a V-cut bit. And the sled is tied up to a gearing system, so as you turn the head of the bolt, it's also moving the sled gearing, and so it moves along at the rotation of the head. And that may sound like a large mechanical contraption to make, but it is far easier to make one of those than it is to make a multi-stage threading box. Because they're a lot of work. They're a lot of work. There are a bunch of other ways of doing it, and I've seen you can do it with like scratch stocks. Those are very, very difficult to get started, but they can work. And you actually end up with like 8 scratch stock scratches in order, and each one taking off more material. And then you can set it a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And there's a few other methods, but actually making a thread box is a serious, serious pain. You're going to spend more time and effort on it than you would just buying one from Acer or, oh, come on. Lake Erie, there's the one. Yes. Is that a super chat?
It is, just for a mum joke.
Thank you, Warren.
Oh, Warren. I'm not prepared tonight. Hang on, let me see if I can find something.
For those of you who don't know, if you super chat, you get a joke from Sarah. And most of the time...
It's been a few weeks, eh?
Yes. Now, we had technical problems last week, and then the week before that, we were at something. Oh, no, I don't remember what that was. But it's been a while. Yeah, why don't you want to throw a question at me?
Here, hang on.
Oh, she's looking.
What do you call someone who sees a crime at an Apple store?
What do you call someone who sees a what?
What do you call someone who sees a crime at the Apple store?
What?
An eyewitness.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Yes. What's next?
Okay, so we have 2 follow-up questions to the question you just answered.
Okay.
One is from Richard Buckman. Can you use a metal nut if you can find one that has the thread you want?
Yes. I have never seen a good metal nut that's 2 or 3 inches in diameter. Yeah. I mean, technically, the easiest way to make it is to get a metal bolt that's the right size, because you can make a tap out of the bolt really easily, and you can get really nice threads in a nut. And then once you have that, you can turn that into the thread box. And so that's what a lot of people end up doing with leveling legs. You can get those Acme screw leveling legs for construction things. And so you can easily make one of those into the tap to cut it. But yeah, I would love to see a nut that big. That would be a really seriously heavy nut. But what you could do with the nut then is you can file slots in the teeth and turn that into the tap for it. Though you would have to work it on a little ways and then back it all the way off, get the junk out, work it on a little ways, back it all the way off, get the junk out, work it on a little ways. So it would be a slow and tedious way, but it could do that. What's next?
All right, and then Alex wants to know how to make a matching tap for the existing box cutter.
A matching tap?
Maybe I was thinking, oh, I thought it said thread.
Oh,
That's
well, no,
why.
you would make the nut, because I have a video showing, let me grab it here. This one. Making the nuts for them. And so those you can generally carve. Those are actually really easy to carve. The nuts are easy to make. The bolts are difficult to make. But the nuts are rather easy to make. And so these, I have a couple videos on making these nuts and bolts. Nuts and bolts. Nuts and bolts. We've been... What's the next question?
We have a super chat from Jack Gallagher.
Oh, thanks, Jack.
And it says, that routing jig idea is genius. Setting up that gearing sounds super fun, actually. Thanks. Get to pretend I'm Matthias for a day.
Actually, I think he has a video on that. But yeah, there's several videos online of making threads with that. The way a lot of the companies make wooden threads is actually on a lathe, and they'll have a thread cutting run that actually moves with it, which would be kind of cool and fun to play with. But yeah, there's lots of good YouTube videos of that. What's the mom joke?
Well, first of all, I'm very scared by Jack's picture because it looks like you have another twin. Jack, you must share with us on Hive Mind if you are there. Because
Bald-headed beards, it's the way to go.
yeah, but it's a red beard too. I'm telling you. Anyways, which country's capital has the fastest growing population?
What?
Ireland, because every day it's Dublin.
Yeah.
You married me. You picked me. All right. Clockman45 wants to know. I made... Okay, hang on. This is not reading well. I made a box out of cherry, but the wood has dark gray blotches. If I seal the box, will I still be able to put clear varnish on it, and will it look right?
Well, the way you would seal it wouldn't fix the gray blotches, but I'm assuming you're saying that when it sits out, gray blotches. Yes, cherry naturally turns darker and darker and darker and darker over the years, and nothing you can do sealing it and otherwise will stop that. It will always be changing color, and so sealing the wood kind of has a misnomer. You're not actually locking the wood out so it doesn't get any air or anything to it. The only way you can do that is to submerge it in epoxy, and even then you'll still get some penetration through it. So you don't actually seal the wood. Air and moisture still get in through it. So yeah, the thing that changes color most of the time is actually the ultraviolet, and that seems, I don't know, graying is a thing I've never quite seen on cherry. So I'm kind of interested to see where that's at. That's the confusing part to me. But yeah, usually it's an ultraviolet thing. So if you keep it out of the sun, it keeps its color a little bit better. But sealing it's generally not going to maintain the color any better. But I think I'm missing your question altogether. So feel free to resubmit that or send me an email, and I'll be glad to take a look through it. What's next?
Just so you know, these numbers might not quite match up when you post them. I keep forgetting to put them in when I ask. Let's see. Ken Carlile, do you have problems with feature creep on projects? I have a nasty tendency to redesign my projects mid-build.
Sometimes, yes. Especially when I first got started. one of the greatest things to learn is to be okay with being okay and not being great. And that also tends to kill a lot of that extemporaneous feature creep. But part of it is my design process for most things is usually years and years long. And it's just rattling around in the back of my brain. And whenever I'm sitting doing nothing, I'll pull up one of those projects in my brain and just go through the design and how this works into that and how things play together. And I've got a dozen or so projects that I'm working on up there. And so that, once something comes out of there and is actually into process, it's pretty well set in stone. There's not going to be much changing. But often there are little things that are like, ooh, I could put a secret drawer in there. And those do kind of build up. The one nice thing I have is that I have deadlines for getting videos out. So if I can't get it in time, it doesn't go in. And that tends to make things a little bit easier to say yes and no to. But if I didn't have that deadline, then yeah, there's a lot of other things that would sneak into my projects. Yeah, that's a normal problem for a lot of people. What's next?
All right, Garry Johnson wants to know any advice for working with Ipe.
Ooh, don't, stay away, run away. Now, Ipe is a fun wood. It's not the hardest wood on the earth, though it is one of the harder ones. It has a very heavy silica content, really, really solid silica content, and it will dull tools like that. You look at them funny, and it dulls them. So it's a pain. It's very stringy. It tends to have reversing grain, so you have a lot of tear out issues. You've got to keep the tools sharp or they won't cut into it. They'll kind of skip across the top and they dull out really quickly. So you have some times where with some irons you only get 30, 40, 50 shavings and you've got to go back and sharpen it again because it's a pain. But it has a great exterior water resistance, very durable wood, lasts forever. It's a really nice wood for a lot of applications. Just an absolute pain to work with. And it doesn't look all that good in my book, though I know a lot of people who really like the look of it. It just doesn't have a whole lot of features to it. It's a fairly smooth, homogeneous color. So, yeah. I'm looking at this piece down here of Ipe I was playing with. No, that's walnut. No, that's not Ipe. I picked it up and I was like, there's a piece of Ipe. There we go. Ipe. What's next?
Let's see. Dr. Khan wants to know, will James ever try chainsaw carving?
I have. Yeah. It's fun to try, but I don't find a whole lot of fun in it after a while. Just working with a chainsaw is exhausting.
You don't like anything that requires your hand above your head. That is something you must learn about.
If my hands go higher than this, I suddenly get very angry, really angry. Like if I'm working on something up here, no one can be around me. It's
not pretty. So hand planes are really, really good.
I didn't terribly enjoy it because it just takes a lot of work. You're holding a heavy tool and you're trying to be minute with it, and there's a lot of skill to it too. So it's kind of one of those fun things that if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. I'd rather go at it with a big gouge and a big mallet and just whack away on it and have a lot of fun with that. But different strokes for different folks. What's next?
Trusty Rusty wants to know, what's your worst woodworking accident?
Mine was probably this scar. I have a scar right across my thumb, and that chisel's not here anymore. That chisel's gone. I had an 1.5 inch chisel that rolled off the bench, and I saw it rolling towards the side, and my brain said, catch it, and my hand went down to catch it before it actually went off the bench. And I was measuring trajectory. When my trajectory was off, my hand was lower than it, and it fell off and went thunk right into my hand. Probably should have had stitches. Oh, here, I don't know if you guys can see. It's a scar right there.
I mean, you can kind of see it.
You probably can't see it, but that was the worst thing I've had with this. I had a few accidents when I was in my dad's house. My dad did some things that were interesting. He tried to grab a spinning router bit once. It didn't go very well.
You're not allowed to use, what was that one tool on your knee?
Oh yeah, an angle grinder.
Angle grinder.
That was just pure stupidity. We had I used to do construction, and we had the rails from a garage door went down, and we had the garage door installed before the concrete was down. Well, the concrete layers came in and they poured the concrete and concreted the rails in with the door up, and so the rails were pinched in, and the door couldn't come down all the way, so we had to cut it off flush at the bottom. And the only thing I had was an angle grinder with an 18-inch disc. And so my hands are on there. There's no guard on it. It's spinning a ½ inch away from my knuckles, and I'm bouncing on there trying to cut it off. And it caught and came back at me while I'm kneeling on the ground, and the blade went zing right into my kneecap. And took a nice little chip out of the kneecap. And again, I probably should have had stitches, but we decided not to. That was a fun one.
That was before we were married.
Yeah.
If I had been in charge, that would have been a different story. But anyway,
super chat.
There
Alan.
is, yes. Do you want me to read it to you?
Yeah.
Missed the White Oak Kingdom, especially the Queen Gnome. Question, any new tool James is developing either by himself or in collaboration?
Yes. Jeff from Reed Plains, he is always coming up with new things, and so he has a few things coming down the pipeline. Particularly, I've been really encouraging him to try and get Reed Plains to actually make some planes again. For those of you who don't know, he made them back in the 80s, and they were really, really nice planes, infill planes that were just, they had a few nice functions on them. And so he is in the process and currently working through making a block plane, and it has some really cool functionality to it. And so I'm doing some research for it because we're playing with bed angles and chip breakers and other interesting things with that, possibly with a carbide blade. So things like that are coming down the pipeline. We'll see. I'm also working with DFM Toolworks. We might be making marking knives that are similar to mine from Dan the Maker Man. But you haven't seen his channel, Dan the Maker Man. He is highly underrated, and he makes some of the most beautiful marking knives ever in existence. And this is one of the first ones he made, and it is my all-time favorite. I love this thing. So yeah, Alan. And for those of you wanting to know, for the Knights of the White Oak, we are thinking about doing a get-together in the next month or so. So if you're interested in that and you're local, I have a form with a link down below in the description. You can fill out and get on the notice list for that. So it won't be a big thing, but it'll be in our house, and we'll have I'll have a bunch of scrap wood to get rid of, and we'll have a campfire out back and have a good time just hanging around. So stay tuned. You got a mom joke?
I'm trying to decide if I want the Batman joke or the James Bond joke.
Oh, James Bond.
James Bond, okay.
Can't go wrong with the name.
What did James Bond's mom say as she was giving birth?
What?
I've been expecting you, Mr. Bond.
I like that one.
Well, we got 1 out of 3 that'll get you to like, all right.
What's next?
I don't know. I'm not sure we're going to get to all these questions now. But anyways. Oh, this is a real... R has a very serious question. Goth or grunge in the 90s? I feel Sarah was goth. We were still babies in the 90s. Not babies, but...
I would have been grunge.
You were a geek. I was a nerd. Let's be honest. I had glasses this big. One year they were tinted orange.
Yeah.
And you had a blonde afro. So,
Yes.
like, come on now.
I was... Yeah.
If we had been 5 years older, maybe. Still would be a geek. You would have been Revenge of the Nerds, okay?
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Don't even.
What's next?
I'm keeping it honest here, people. Preppies. No, not preppy. You gotta remember, we were like 10 to 15, 14 in the 90s, so. All right, Butch Landry. What's the pile of stuff to the left of your bench?
Pile of stuff to the left. I've got stuff piled everywhere right now. Here, let me take this off. So I've got stuff piled here, and I've got stuff piled there, and stuff piled there, and stuff piled there, and stuff piled there, and more stuff over there, and there's
It's really
some other
fuzzy,
things.
but it's okay
Yeah, I'm
because
trying
y'all
to
don't need
focus
to
it.
see me in my wondermess.
Yeah, there's Sarah over there. So stuff to the left. From your point of view, left would be the sharpening bench. And so I don't know what you're referring to because I have a bunch of wood over here. And those are test boards. So like I have a lot of boards with holes in them. So every time I'm testing a hole size for a dowel or a connection like that, I have boards over here that I just drill. A lot of these are demonstration boards, so I have different types of boards, different things I can cut grooves in, cut corners off, and that's good for just showing a tool in use in a video. And so I'll grab scrap over here. And eventually they get whittled down so much and they go off to the scrap pile, go out to be burned. And usually the pile goes through about a 1-year cycle. So I'm assuming that's what you're referring to. There are a few tools in there, such as a circle and my wooden straight edge, but most of it's just scrap wood that I cut off.
On the bench. I don't know if you meant your left.
Oh, well, I've got all this over here, which are several different projects. Like I'm working on making a coin sorter. I've got 3 different back saws that I'm currently making. Yeah, those are the 2 projects on here right now. I'm getting things ready because tomorrow Luke is coming over and we're doing a bunch of recording. I record with Luke usually once every other week. This one's a special session because we also recorded last week. So, yeah. That's what I have on the bench right now is the coin sorter, the 3 back saws. Yeah, and several things have to do with the back saws, such as I'm working on a new setup for cutting the teeth. I have some other stuff over there for etching the plates. And everything else is just kind of a mess. Because I ran out of time to do a full clean before the video. So you get to see the reality of what the shop looks like.
Oh, look, Sarah's bench is still covered too. Anyways.
Yeah, I uncover it every now and then, but it's a horizontal surface. It's just a magnet. I've got to clean it off here in a little bit because when I go to the MWTCA event, I have to take that with me.
Oh, yeah, it gets cleaned off when James has to take it.
Well, yeah, that's why I made it. Oh my, that stare. I'm about to die. As soon as this camera turns off, everybody's seeing it.
Okay, folks, the live's over.
What's next?
Anyways, let's see. I'm not sure I'm going to say this right. Svinsvein. Old wooden plow plane. The planer looks to be in good condition. The wooden nut and bolts are stuck pretty good. Do you have any tips to getting the nut loose?
Yeah, oil. Penetrating oil works really well. 3-in-1 oil. Yeah, you can't use the traditional things of heating them up and moving them around. Most of the time it's just brute force and violent manipulation and prayers that they don't crack. Because that's, you can shrink them by sticking them in the oven for a little bit, take it up to like 200, actually you want to go a little bit higher than that to try and take the moisture out. If you take it up to like 220, you'll dry them out completely and everything will shrink, but then you may end up with cracking or moving. Yeah, I don't directly recommend it. Trying to think what else I would do. Mostly just oil and brute strength and violent manipulation. Yeah, unless there's something specific with it. But feel free to send me pictures. I'd be glad to take a look at it. Those can be a lot of fun to get up and running again.
All right, I have
4 questions left that I've pulled out. They're probably all we're going to get to at this point, but
let's see what we can do.
depends how much you talk. And I'm probably not going to say this next name correct. Huy Nguyen? I think it's how you say that name.
Probably better than I would have said it.
I worked with a doctor with the same last name, and I thought that's how we said it, but I'm probably saying it wrong. Why don't you use wooden bench planes?
They're a bit more finicky, and they are really nice if what your goal is making shavings and enjoying the moment of using them. They are very, very fun for that. However, for the general usefulness of getting the job done and the usability, they are a little bit less functional. They'll do the same work, but they take a little bit more to set up. They take a little bit more to do. They take a little bit more love to work with. They have to be flattened from time to time. They have a little bit of a finickiness to them, but they feel so good. They're just a lot of fun to use. But generally, for most everyday work, I'm going to be grabbing metal planes. I do have several wooden planes that I use from time to time, but I just don't find them quite as enjoyable. So in the end, it's just a personal thing. I find metal body planes to be a little more fun, so that's why I use them. What's next?
Dennis Miko wants to know, what's the worst plane you've ever used?
That one's easy. Harbor Freight number 33. It's not even heavy enough to be a boat anchor. It's just a hunk of trash. When I did the plane iron test, that one was so bad. I think mild steel would have actually been an improvement over it. It was just a horrible plane. It didn't work very well, and it was just all around a bad plane. So that was yeah. I am looking at doing a series here soon, because I've had a bunch of people wanting me to actually test low-end planes. So planes that are under $100, and do a 1-to-1, so get the size that's closest to the number 4, and buy them brand new, and see how much time does it take to get that up and running and being able to make a specific shaving. And then going through all the pros and cons of each one in that particular one that I got. And so I'm thinking about doing that. The only problem with it is I don't have the money to buy 25 new planes, even if they're all under 100. So what I'm thinking of doing is doing a thing where people can buy the plane and have it sent to me. I'll use it. When I'm done, I'll ship it back to you. Or give it away to someone else, or do some sort of giveaway or charity thing with them. Because when I'm done with it, they'll all be fully functional working planes. Unless they have really horrible irons like the Harbor Freight number 33. It'd be kind of a fun one to do. So yeah, if you're interested in that, let me know. What's next?
All right, this one has a winky smiley face. I'm hoping it's a legit question, Alex, and you're not just trying to chip me up. Is there a hand-powered biscuit jointer or hand-cranked domino tool?
I have never actually... Oh, well, okay. I've never seen one specifically like that. There are, like the oscillating bit from the domino. I've never seen one do that. Although I do take that back. What was that for? It wasn't for dominoes, but it was something for housings, and it was made that same way. It actually had an oscillating bit, but it was hand cranked. And it was kind of like a beam drill that you'd set on it, and you'd have this crank, and the whole thing, the mechanics of it would actually run like that. But I can't remember what that was for. There are weird mechanical things that are designed to cut lock pockets. So the old pockets would have these lock mechanisms that would slide into the edge of the door. And so it'd be like 4 auger bits that would run down side by side and would all be run with one crank. And there's a few other things like that, but no, I've never seen a hand crank biscuit. And I've never seen anything actually made for cutting dominoes. Generally, if you want that, you just drill a hole and put a dowel in it. The one benefit to the domino is it doesn't twist, so it has some twisting support, whereas a dowel can become a fulcrum and rotate on that. But the way you fix that is you put two dowels. Two dowels can't rotate. And it's really very similar in strength to a domino. So, yeah. What's next? You have one more?
Two more because I can't count apparently. James Crandall asks, buying the wood to make a lowboy, was wondering the best option to make the cabriole legs without a bandsaw. Also trying to see an easier option for a shell carving.
Best advice I can give you is don't make cabriole legs. they're annoying. But yeah, the traditional historical way is to use a turning saw. It is the bandsaw of the pre-bandsaw era. It's slower, but it does the exact same thing. And so yes, you can, anything you can do with a bandsaw, you can do with one of these. The other way is the lost wood method and just carve the whole thing. You don't actually have to cut it down. You can grab a chisel and chop down to it and cut relief cuts every so often down to your mark, and then chop it out with a chisel, come in with a spoke shave and get it down close to your line. And you can do it face by face by face that way. But yeah, that's the historical way is with a turning saw. What was the other half of the question?
Easier option for shell carving.
For shell carving?
Oh,
yeah, on the fronts. Not really. I mean, if you're carving a shell, you've got a specific set of tools you need, and really the only way to do it is the traditional way to do it. Unless you're going to CNC it, the only way to carve it is to just carve it. Yeah, and honestly, it is just carving it. Do a practice piece. It's not a very difficult thing to carve, as long as you don't get perfectionistic about it. If you get perfectionistic about it, you will never finish a single one, because that's one of those carvings you can go at it for years and just slowly pick away and make it slightly better and slightly better and slightly better. You just have to come to a certain point where you say, that's good enough. The average person coming and looking at it won't know a thing. The average woodworker who comes and looks at it won't know a thing. You'll be the only one who will notice all those little problems with it. So just be ready to say enough is enough. You can't pick any more out of it. What's next?
.777 asked, recently I asked another woodworker why they preferred a very fine glass stone versus leather strop, but he didn't have any input. What would be some pros versus cons that you can think of, James?
In the end, they'll give you the exact same thing. So one will not give you a better finish or a better edge or a better anything than the other. There are two different ways of achieving the same end goal. The nice thing about a stone is that it will give you a perfectly flat bevel. It will give you that feeling and that polish that you just can't get anywhere. And you'll get a really nice mirror polish off. It just feels good, and it is very tactile. It's a lot like working with wooden hand planes. It feels really good to actually do in the moment. A strop, though, is much, much faster. There's no water, there's no mess, there's no fuss. You just go strop, 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 it's done. You won't get as much of that appearance of a polish. You will get an ever so slightly but rounded bevel from it because you're compressing the leather a little bit. And so a lot of those things annoy perfectionists. And so that's really the big reason why you're going to want one or the other. And in the actual finished project, none of that really matters, because the only thing that matters is the point. Does the bevel have to be perfectly flat? No. If you hand sharpen a bevel, it's going to have an ever so slight camber to it. Doesn't matter how good you are or how perfect you think you are, there's going to be a slight bevel to it. That's not a slight bevel, a slight camber to it. That's just part of hand sharpening. Yeah, and that's a really good way to start arguments, because the people who like stones tend to be very, this is the best way to do it. Well, I mean, you have to say that about some people with strops too. There are some people who are like, strops are the only way to do it. I mean, no, there's good ways to do it on both directions. It really comes down to what do you like. They'll both give you the exact same thing in the end. So is one better than the other? No.
You can't buy seconds or thirds of those.
What's that?
Can't buy seconds or thirds of those.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you can always buy strops on woodbywright.com. We even have seconds and thirds in stock, so if you want to save a little bit of money, you can do that.
So, shameless plug.
Yes. Is that the last one or is there one more?
We're calling it the last one.
Cool. Well, I think that will do it. If you are going to be at the Best in the West next weekend, I'm looking forward to seeing you there. We'll be doing a couple lives. And if you have anything that I didn't get, send me a message. And until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye.
Ta-da!